the shutdown and the president's tariffs with China have had large ripple effects on the economy.
But there could be some hope that a full-blown trade war could be avoided. President Trump struck multiple deals with Chinese President Xi Jinping this week. The agreements could have major implications for rare earth exports and soybean purchases. As for what that could look like for people, we're joined by Joseph Livornia, counselor to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be with you.
Thanks. How will this Asia trip impact Americans in your view, and how long will it take for those impacts to really make significant feeling for people?
Sure. Well, President Trump basically took a lot of the uncertainty out of the market and created very good deals for key constituents and for the broader economy. Key constituent, a key area of support the president supported are the farmers, and the Chinese have committed to buying substantial amounts of soybeans. I believe 25 million metric tons per year, which is a huge number. And of course, we've lowered the tariff on the fentanyl coming in, so that the effective rate on Chinese goods is now 47% from 57%. And what that does is it allows access to the rare earths that we need, and it makes sure that we hold the Chinese accountable for the fentanyl that's coming in, as there's metrics that we'll be using to make sure that they're actually adhering to the deal. So that's really important in terms of taking uncertainty out. The financial markets generally anticipated President Trump being very successful in his negotiations with President Xi, and that's why you've seen markets essentially at all-time highs, as there was an expectation that the president would deliver for farmers, American businesses, take that uncertainty out, and people looking forward now to what should be a very, very strong 2026.
Well, speaking of that, we often hear Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick say that it's not Donald Trump's economy until the new year. When we're facing headwinds, a softening labor market, inflation being up. How are things going when American people go to the grocery store and they're still having to pay high prices on things that they need every single day, when college kids are struggling to find a job, when we're seeing mass layoffs at Target, Lufthansa, Amazon, Procter & Gamble? How are things going economically?
I'd say that it is, generally, I would say, is President Trump's economy, in the sense, if you look at the second quarter GDP data, when the government spending side is taken out, we actually grew 4.5%. I mean, the 3.8 was very strong. We actually grew even 4.5%. Before the Democrats shut the government down, it looked like the economy was growing at 4% again in the third quarter. And I'd say that's largely the result of President Trump, because the areas where we've seen a lot of strength was on the investment side, and the investment side was driven by the one big beautiful bill, which is incentivized investment that was going to be 100% expensed back to the beginning of the year. Where we are now, as you kind of allude to, is sort of a little bit on a knife edge. We've got the labor market, which still has historically low unemployment. You've got low hiring, which is what you're alluding to, but you've got low firing. And I think businesses are very confident in President Trump's ability to produce a very healthy economy, especially for blue-collar workers. So that right now is preventing companies from normally firing workers, because when you have low hiring, you typically have low firing. But this is also why we need the government to reopen, to get 5 Democrats to come on board to support us. Because if you don't have good data, that does two things. One, it creates uncertainty in the business community, because they're not sure how strong the economy is. They're not sure how overall demand is. And also it impacts monetary policy making, because maybe the Federal Reserve should be cutting rates more than they are, but they can't because they're not sure what the data look like.
So Republican senators are voting with Democrats on resolutions aimed at ending the president's tariff authority. This is an issue that's also going through the courts. How concerned is the administration over the GOP's support on this?
Well, the administration believes that when they hear the IEPA case, which begins next Wednesday on the 5th, that the Supreme Court will rule in our favor. However, in the unlikely event that the court rules against us partially, or fully, we've got plans in place that we could use to make sure that the tariff wall maintains itself, because we're generating right now, based on the latest data, about $400 billion in revenues. Those tariffs are also important in terms of encouraging capital to come into the United States, because then it won't be tariffed. That ties in with the low tax rates, the abundant energy policies the president has put forward, business-friendly regulation. If you want to create American jobs, you need capital to come in. This ties in with all the trade deals as well. So there's a lot going on, and my guess is that what'll happen is if we have to, we'll use Section 122, which is a 15% tariff that'd be in place for 150 days that can be renewed. And the Treasury is also working with our colleagues in Commerce and Trade to open up Section 301 investigations if the court was to rule against us. So the tariffs are going to be here. They've been an extraordinarily effective tool that President Trump has used. And so we'll see exactly how they rule, but there are backup plans, and those tariffs are going to be here.
Well, Joe, soybean farmers out there would maybe disagree. But before the president's trip to Asia, where he did strike this deal, as you mentioned, 12 million metric tons that China is going to buy, a minimum of 25 million metric tons over the next 3 years. But critics are arguing that's less soybean purchases than what China was making before the president took office and implemented this tariff. Is this actually a good deal for soybean farmers? Have they been made whole by this deal?
Yes, it is a good deal. This is the start of a process. People are always going to be critical and say things could have been better, but this by far was the best deal that the U.S. could have achieved. President Trump was very successful on it. He said he was very happy. He called it a 12 out of 10. And the farmers are clearly very important to the president. And I'm sure there'll be other programs going forward that will benefit farmers. So I think this is the start of it. This is a discussion. And President Trump has a very good relationship with President Xi. So I personally would not be critical of this deal.
Two more questions for farmers. One on the soybean. What other markets are out there beyond China for farmers to sell their soybeans to? And what's going on with this Argentinian beef export? Because I know a lot of senators from heavily ranching states are really concerned about what this can mean for cattle farmers.
Yeah, well, American soybean farmers produce tremendous amounts of soybeans. So it's not just China; it's used in so many products. Latin America, Europe. There's so many other outlets. The U.S. exports to the whole world, so it doesn't just have to be China. China's just a major producer. They were importing virtually no soybeans, so this is a really positive step going forward. In terms of the cattle ranchers, there's been concerns about beef, and the president listens to what the farming industry says. So one of the reasons these issues are brought to, or these concerns are brought to the forefront, is that the president will listen to what his base, what the farmers are saying, and then react accordingly. So we'll see what happens with the cattle ranching, but the president is aware of the situation and will do whatever he can to help this important group.
So we all know how important rare earths are to the technology industry. And we also know that the deal right now talks about a one-year window where China is basically going to loosen its export restraints and, let us have some of those rare minerals. But if it's only for a year, does that give China an opportunity for more leverage on the other side of it? It seems like it's a partial victory.
Yeah, well, so as Secretary Bessent had said last night, the reason the Chinese caved, if you will, to what the U.S., what the president wanted, is because we would put a 100% tariff on their products above what's already there. That effectively acts as an embargo. The U.S. is the largest economy in the world. We are China's most important export market to them. So if there isn't progress being made over the next year on fentanyl and all the other aspects that the president agreed to with President Xi, then those tariffs will come back into effect. So I think we'll be very successful, and my guess is a year from now, if need be, they'll just be rolled forward into the current structure, and the Chinese will buy significant amounts of our product. I should also add, which I didn't say earlier, is that President Trump also signed historic trade deals with South Korea and Japan, which are hugely additive to the American economy. So this isn't just about China. It's also about other countries, key partners that have committed to significant capital infusion into the U.S.
Can I just ask you one more question about that? The president's
Sure.
critics, and some of them in different countries, see this as extortion, but they put on a happy face because they want to be able to deal with the largest economy on earth. How would you respond to that?
Well, a lot of these countries have very high tariffs above where the U.S. was, and have various limitations on our ability to export into their markets because they're closed. So I wouldn't say extortion at all. The president is concerned about the U.S. be taking advantage of. He wanted to reset the trading apparatus and structure that had been in place in the Second World War, where the U.S. was a major exporter when we had trade surpluses. And since China and many others came into the world trading system, the U.S. effectively has subsidized a lot of economies to the detriment of U.S. workers. And therefore, the president is right-sizing trade relationships in a way that's beneficial to the U.S. economy. And these countries would not be, in the case of Japan, committing $550 billion, or in the case of South Korea, $350 billion. And along with other countries and companies that have pledged capital. This isn't extortionary. They're opportunistic because they know the U.S. is open for business with a very highly skilled workforce that can grow and expand with a very favorable tax base. And by the way, rising productivity and effectively the fastest growing GDP per capita in the industrialized world. Why wouldn't you want to come into the United States?
All right, Joe Livornia, counselor to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Joe, we appreciate the time this Friday morning.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, you as well.